Is taken from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. This is week 13, Deeds versus Intentions. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Jesus Christ emphasized repeatedly the spirit, not the letter of the law. In chapter 5 of the Gospel of St. Matthew, he speaks of the sin of killing and of the legal punishment attendant on that sin, but says that more important than the act is the desire to kill or to do harm. He shows that the sin of harmful desire goes beyond merely wanting to kill. My message to you, he said, is this: whoever is angry with his brother without cause already stands condemned. Whoever contemptuously calls his brother a fool shall answer for it to the Supreme Council. And whoever calls his brother an outcast of God shall be in danger of hellfire. Brother here means any other human being. For all of us, in the highest sense, are brothers and sisters, children of our one Father, Mother, God. The true self of one is the self of all. To hurt another is, even if one doesn't realize it, to hurt oneself. Swami Kriyananda in The Path recalls an episode in which the master, Paramhansa Yogananda, revealed his sense of identity even with the plants. One day, Kriyananda wrote, we were moving a delicate but rather heavy tropical plant into position on the hillside. Our handling evidently was too rough, for Master cried out, "Be careful what you're doing. Can't you feel? It's alive." To wish death to anyone, to wish even harm to another creature, is to deny in oneself the reality of that divine life, of which all of us are manifestations. It is, in short, to deny the eternal truth, proclaimed by the Bhagavad Gita in the 2nd chapter. This self is never born, nor does it perish. Once existing, it cannot ever cease to be. It is birthless, eternal, changeless, ever itself. It is not slain when the body is slain. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Oh.
For those who don't know me, I'm Rose, and I was invited by Daivan Gangamata to share part of the sermon with you today. So it's my joy to be here, and be patient with me as I'm shaking a little bit. This isn't my normal place. I'd like to start with going back to the affirmation today of patience. I am neither the ripple on the surface of the sea, nor yet the crashing waves. I am the vast, deep ocean deeps, unaffected by the mighty surface storms, and untouched by any superficial change. I have been practicing, but it's different when you're up here. So Paramahansa Yogananda was an avatar. His consciousness was completely, it was one with the deep, infinite rhythms of the universe. And as Swami Kriyananda talks about, he was always even-minded. He was never disturbed. Swami Kriyananda, too, tapped into that infinite pool of joy and bliss and peace. And he would often say, I never allow anything to disturb my inner peace. And then there's us. We may have moments where we're tuning into that infinite consciousness, a moment of bliss, a moment of joy and contentment, but it's an area that we're all working on. When I found out a couple weeks ago that this was the affirmation of today's Sunday service, I thought, well, they say that patience is the shortest path to God. I think I will just start giving this some attention, and I think I'll make a list. I'll make a list of every time I have to tune into that quality of patience and use patience in some way. So this was Easter weekend, and so I started and writing one. It only took a couple of days before I had a whole page of incidents of when I had to tune into patience, starting with myself, being patient with myself, starting the first thing in the morning with meditation. How many years have I been meditating, and still I've got to bring my mind back to Hang Sa. Okay, you're breathing, right? Pay attention to your breathing, all these basics. And patience with myself when I'm learning. Learning in relationships, learning at work, still learning being a parent in all these ways. So that was many things on my list. Other people having patience with me, as I'm learning and growing in skills, and we're fumbling through life a lot of the time. We're doing our best, but it's often that other people need to have patience with us, patience with others. So that comes up constantly. I'm the mom of 2 teenagers and a young adult, and that is pretty much hallmark at this stage of the game in parenting. You're kind of, I really want to tell them that, but I can't. I really want to guide them in that way, but I can't. It's a time for them to learn on their own. My 18-year-old son, last night, I was telling him at dinner, I said, I'm going to talk about patience tomorrow at a Sunday service. And right away he looked at it. And he pointed to his younger brother. And I said, no, I'm not going to tell any stories about your younger brother. That's not appropriate. But many of you know them and can picture that interaction. Patience at work. How many of us have jobs where, all of these patience with ourselves, with others, other people being patient, it's a constant play of working with this quality. Many of you know that I'm the director of the Living Wisdom School, and we're going on year 4 of a building project that we started in March of 2014. And that's when the initial agreement by the advisory board and everyone in the school community said, yes, let's go forward with this project. And it's been many people will look at that and say, wow, that took a lot of patience, where there's a surge of energy and momentum and manifestation, and then there's a wait, and then there's a surge of energy, and then there's a wait. And yes, it's definitely been an area where I've had to grow a lot, how to continue to sit with the delay and sit with joy at the same time. But to tell you the truth, that project and my work, it requires patience. But what was funny, what I realized over Easter weekend, what really requires a lot of patience for me is making the bunny cake. So those that were at the Easter potluck, and many Easter potlucks at the Portland community, know that I make a bunny cake. It's a family tradition. You have 2 circular pans, and one's the head, and then you cut the other 2 to have a bow tie and ears. And because I have a child that's gluten-free and egg-free, I've got to use the special mix to make it work. And I got to tell you, it never gets easier. You cut the ears out, and there's the big cakes, the bow tie, and you're trying so hard to ice the cake without getting all the pieces of cake in the icing and look all funky. You want it to look good for everyone. And over the years, it's really gotten me sometimes. I get pretty darn agitated. And I've timed it now so that, okay, I have a good night's sleep, I've meditated, and I've got a cup of coffee. Now, this is, and I find myself just getting, why is this so hard? There's people that do cake decorating for a profession, and I can't. I get so irritated with it. So I've learned over the years, I'm going to bring in the tools of our path when I'm icing the bunny cake. So first I start with japa. Start Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru, God, Christ, Guru, chanting joy, joy, joy. This is supposed to be joyful. It's a cute bunny cake with jelly beans and everything. So I do the japa, I do the chanting, I do the breathing. Okay, deep breath. Okay, it's measured breathing, and this sounds ridiculous, but we all have an area of our life where something really gets to us. Maybe it's, the parking lot at New Seasons on a Wednesday, or it's calling the insurance person and having to be on the line for 2 hours, or the QuickBooks IT technician. That's what I have to deal with at my work sometimes. There's always something that gets us. If those two don't work, which sometimes they don't, in this situation or others, move the energy. How do we move the energy and move it upwards? It's walking, it's talking with a friend, doing something that brings us joy. We're made of energy, and bringing that energy up to this point, there's universal ways to do that for all of us, and all of the tools on our path help us to bring the energy up here. But there's things that we can do that we know that are specific for ourselves. Going outside, for me, sometimes it's digging in the dirt. I'm doing dirt and icing at the same time, but something to move the energy up. One of the things that, when thinking about patients, that I tune into a lot is, especially in my capacity at work and living in community, is the stories that I've heard of Swami Kriyananda, how he would tune into the long rhythms of the people around him in terms of giving them feedback and telling them something about their growth. And so sometimes he would wait, the people around him would say, can't you do something about this personality quirk of this person that's affecting all of us? But he would wait patiently, tuning into, I'm sure, that vast ocean of bliss, until it was right for that soul, until they were receptive. And then that was the time to talk to them, and then they could hear it. I found him talking about this in Asha Praver's book, Love and Protected. And so I'll share this story. This is in 2003, so it was 10 years before he left his body, but he talks about this. After he moved to India in 2003, Swamiji began to correct those who were close to him more frankly and directly than he had in the past, sometimes with little regard for their personal feelings. I don't mean to hurt you, Swamiji said to a close coworker after reprimanding him sharply in front of others on an important spiritual issue. I expect my friends to understand that I can't be as patient as I used to be. I don't know how much time I have left. Swamiji goes on to say, I used to be able to tell someone just a little bit of what I wanted him to know, then give him 10 years to grow into it before saying more. Now I don't have 10 years, and I want to help you all as much as I can. That's so touching to me, his love for all of us, and also that quality. It's, I've heard him talk about in some of his magnetic leadership talks and art of supportive leadership, that our culture, especially for our culture, it's difficult. We're an impatient, get to it, don't wait, convenient culture, and that the longer rhythms, the bigger picture, the seeing the goal and staying committed to the goal while we go through all the ups and downs is a challenge for us. But it's worth the while. It's worth the energy that you put into it. in Education for Life, Swami, one of the principles when we work with kiddos, Education for Life is the education philosophy that came out of Yogananda's Ideals for Education, and Swami Kriyananda developed a system of education that we use at Living Wisdom School. And one of the principles is meeting kids where they are, meeting them on every level, and in the work we do is we don't talk about consciousness, but meeting their consciousness, and then helping to move that consciousness, guide that to their next step of growth, whether it be academic, socially, emotionally, but also spiritually. And when I think about another quality of tuning into patience, it's meeting whatever we're impatient or agitated about right where it is. Often we get impatient because it's like, it's 4 o'clock, it shouldn't be this amount of traffic. Why is the traffic? It shouldn't be like this. We shouldn't have a mile of traffic on Beaverton Hillsdale this time. And it gets us agitated, whereas we've said, oh, this is what it is. I wonder what's going on. Is there road work? Is there an accident? Is someone just going real slow? And it seems to, it's much easier us to stay in that relaxed state so that we can move the energy up here and tune into different techniques, whether it's listening to music or breathing or thinking of something funny, whatever, to move the energy up here. Yogananda says, conditions are always neutral. They appear happy or sad, beneficial or harmful, according to the positive or negative attitudes of the mind. So that is something that we can control if we forget. I know I often forget, but the more I think we practice moving the energy. We have all these tools are for moving energy, and then we get to choose upward by concentrating up here at the point of joy, the center of love, the center of our connection with spirit. Because once you're here, once you're in joy, nothing really matters. So I'm going to end with the prayer of St. Teresa of Avila, which is the prayer that our chant is based on. Let nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. All things are passing away. God never changes. Patience obtains all things. Whoever has God lacks nothing. God alone suffices.
A cartoon, it had God's kitchen. And God is pulling the earth out of the oven, and he says to himself, he's thinking, something tells me this is just half baked.
Very cute. I don't have to tell a joke now. Thank you, Rose. That was beautiful. Thank you. As Rose was talking about our school building, I was thinking about the story of the man who was meditating in his meditation room one day, and God appears to him. And God says to him, I want you to go outside, and there's a big boulder outside your house, and I want you to go and push on that boulder. And so the man does as God instructed him. He goes outside. 20 years passes, and the man realizes all this time has passed, and he begins to weep uncontrollably. He just could not contain it. And God appears to him again. He says, my son, what is wrong? He said, God, you asked me 20 years ago to go out and push this boulder, and I did that, but it didn't move an inch. And God just looks at him, he says, I didn't ask you to move the rock, I just asked you to push. And so we forget, sometimes that's what we need to do, is just push. The building is not finished yet, but there's a reason why it's not finished yet. The man, through those 20 years of pushing, he became strong, he became steadfast, he gained patience, the shortest path to God, understanding, deeper wisdom. And that's what sometimes is happening for us when these things don't happen. And that's why patience is such a wonderful reminder for us on the path. But the masters remind us that only a little, even a little practice of this inward religion will free us. They promise us that. They promise us that. They say, open your heart to me. And that's another way to have more patience. Because when we get impatient, and basically our topic today, deed versus intention, It's basically about the issue of right attitude, right? When something happens that doesn't go right, the traffic or whatever, we're impatient. We close off, or if we've done a good job at work and our boss fires us, or we've been a real loyal friend and that friend betrays us, what happens, you can feel the heart, closing, right? And Sister Gyanamata, we quoted her this morning from her beautiful book, God Alone. I too was trying to look for this reading that I wanted to share. I couldn't find it in the book, but I know it's in there. Sister Gyanamata was Yogananda's foremost woman disciple, but she was going through a really difficult test. And Yogananda wrote back to her, in essence, he said, do not tie my hands with your negativity. What he was saying is, if you're negative, if you're closed, how can I help you? How can I get in? So another key in working with patients is keeping the heart open. I remember going through a real difficult test many years ago, and a dear friend at Ananda gave me the best advice ever for getting over this betrayal that I had in my life. She said, keep your heart open, and every day do something new. And what did that do? That helped the energy to move. Just like what Rose was talking about, the education for life principles. We want to keep the energy moving. But again, the masters say just a little practice. Okay? And it can be sometimes in building a new building, or it can even be in frosting that bunny cake. It's in the moments where it comes down to. It's just in those moments. There's a beautiful story of a man who joined this ashram, and his job that he was given was to chop wood and carry water. And he just did that faithfully and regularly. That's all he did, chop wood and carry water. And through the years, he could see that many people came and visited the master in this ashram, and they received initiation, or they were given positions of responsibility, or they did projects, and just a lot was happening for all these people that were coming to visit. And there he was. What he was doing was chopping wood and carrying water. One day, as he was carrying the wood, by accident, he lost hold of the bundle of wood, and a piece of his hair got stuck in the wood. And as he looked down, he was aghast because he could see that his hair turned gray. And he said, oh my, all these years, that's all I've been doing is chopping wood and carrying water. And he too began to weep. We weep a lot, don't we, in front of the masters. He too just began to weep uncontrollably. And all of a sudden, the master comes running from outside the ashram, runs towards him, and catches that first teardrop. And he says, don't you know? If a drop of your tear even were to touch this ground, you who is so sacred, this land would experience a famine that was unheard of for a whole year, a famine and drought. We don't see what the masters see in us. They see us as that light. We see these struggles, as we say in Brooklyn, forget about it. How am I going to find God with all of this, and not so great and whatever, so awesome, whatever it is, But the masters just don't see this. They don't see the struggles that we have. They see us always in that light, always. And Swami Kriyananda, as Rose talked about, beautiful example of that for us. Always saw us. And we, have told the story of he couldn't remember what color Seva's eyes were. Seva was his secretary because he didn't relate to her on that level. He only related to her up here, of who she really was, which was that light and joy and love. And so today's reminder in our topics is to try and have that right attitude, not to close off. Keep the heart open. Remember to be patient. God's presence is always there. It's always guiding us. There was one more story I wanted to share. Yes, we will find God. There was this group of disciples, they were sitting with their guru, and the topic came up. They said, sir, we want to know when each of us will find God. Many of you may know this story. And so he started to go around the room and specifically told each person. He said, now you still have several lifetimes before you find God, but keep at it. And then you only have a couple, so you're getting close. And then he said, and you're really close. But then he turns to one of his closest disciples, and he said, it's going to take you 1,000,000 years before you find God. And everyone just gasped, and they looked at him because they were just so concerned and felt so bad for him. But his reaction was not what they thought it was going to be. He started jumping for joy. And they're like, what are you doing? Didn't you hear? He said, it's going to take you 1,000,000 years before you find God. And he says, what is 1,000,000 years? When he said, I will find God. And in that moment, he was in ecstasy and he was liberated. In that moment, we don't know. We think we know. We think we've got this backpack just filled with things, and whatever it is, we think, and sometimes it's a truck or whatever it is we're carrying with us that we're hauling. We think, but we don't know. At any moment, it can become empty and we become liberated if we only hold ourselves in that thought. Last week's topic is so beautiful and flows into today's topic. If you get a chance, listen to last Sunday's Sunday service. It was beautiful. It was, we are children of the light. The masters come, they remind us constantly, we're children of the light. That's who we are. Be patient, love God, serve, and amen. I think I'll end with this is a short prayer from Whispers from Eternity. And this is a prayer received after a great test of God. In disease or in health, in success or in failure, in poverty or in prosperity, in joy or in sorrow, in disaster or in safety, in life or in death, I stand immutably, unalterably, unshakably loyal, devoted, and firmly loving Thee, my Heavenly Father, forever, forever, and forever. Amen. And
guide me, Lord.